Greetings, good evening. Let me give myself a quick voice check. Yes, I can hear myself. Oh my goodness. Hey. Mick, Kevin, great to see you guys. Great to see you. So 1960 is what we are going into. That originally I was thinking there's not a lot happening in 1960, and then once, of course, I start going into the history of 1960 and everything that happened in 1960, and as a history nerd, all of a sudden everything just starts to increase to the point where what I'm thinking is like, oh, this probably just would be like a 15-minute video, along with a couple of random launches, because not a lot of important launches happened in 1960. However, once I really start getting into it, it's quite a lot does go on in 1960. So I don't think that means I'm really going to make this video be super huge. Yeah, Kevin, that was last night. Oh yeah, the stream from last night was pretty outrageous, as usual. That's what keeps these things interesting, doesn't it? So 1960. What we're looking at, which I don't have prepared. What we're looking at is an X-15 or whatever my version of an X-15 would be. But the basic launches that end up happening in 1960 are going to be a whole bunch of spy satellites. Now, I'm not going to do a whole bunch of spy satellites. I'm just going to launch some spy satellites in general, just to really quickly do that. As a matter of fact, while I'm yapping, why don't I just do that? So I have something to look at besides this incomplete X-15. So yeah, the X-15 plane, it was a rocket plane that was developed in the 50s and started to be launched in between 1958 and in the 60s. And this thing made it to the edge of space. It even had a reaction control system thrusters on it, which I still need to add to this thing, and probably need to make it look a little bit better. And this is where I start getting sidetracked onto, but maybe I should build an X-15 for this year, because this year it started breaking some records, but this thing continues on into the 60s, and I think it's around 64 or something. It actually breaks the space barrier, and like Neil Armstrong flew in one of these things. And I still have to design the plane that's going to actually carry this thing. This thing strapped onto the bottom of a giant plane and flew up into the sky, and then it launched from there. Because they were trying to break records. One of the other things they were doing with the split space plane program was to work on possible like space rescue for people in orbit somehow. Although that didn't really last too long. And actually, I'm going to bring up a timeline if I can. There we go. Of 1960. So yeah, nothing really goes on in January. As you can see, there's a lot of these. There's a lot of missile tests, suborbital launches. And there's also this I found kind of cool. This Echo program where they launch these balloons up into orbit. And actually, that was my original thumbnail. Was this, but I saw the dogs, and I had to change it to the dogs because 1960 is also the first year that they successfully recovered the dogs from orbit. The Russians did. Again, as I've mentioned before, the Americans, we would send usually monkeys into space, and the Russians like sending canines into space. At this point, we had been sending monkeys and stuff into space. The first animals in space actually were fruit flies sent during the 50s. Actually, maybe the very late 40s. I don't quite remember, but those were put onto a V2 rocket and just sent up as far as they could. Now, at this point, just remember, both the U.S. and the Soviets are revving up for their manned program to send up man into space. Now, what's going to end up happening, spoilers, the Russians beat the Americans to it. And one of the big differences in the two programs is the Russians are trying to put a man into orbit at the same time. Remember, orbit being where you're basically up there, stuck circling the planet until you can deorbit. Now, when the Americans finally do it, they only send a man up and down on a ballistic orbit, or rather a suborbital flight, where you're not in orbit. You're just going up, basically up into space and then right back down again. The Americans, because the Americans were taking it slow, basically. And with the first American suborbital flights, they also had, they used the monkeys, and some of these monkeys became kind of famous. But also in NASA in 1960, they were launching these. This is it. One of them is it's inflated, but they would send it deflated on a rocket up into space. Now, the first few of these actually failed, and it looks like the program probably got scrapped. I'm not sure, but they were trying to send these things into space. And I thought it was a cool picture, though. And basically for communications, they were going to bounce radio signals off of these orbiting balloons, and they were coated with some kind of like mylar or whatever, some kind of thing that could reflect radio waves. And this way, basically some kind of really early primitive communication relays in orbit. But yeah, that program didn't last long, and I changed my thumbnail to the doggies because later on in 1960, the Soviet human spaceflight program is known as Vostok, and now, as far as its so the space program goes, it's still called Sputnik. It's Sputnik 4, but it's just classified as Sputnik 4. However, like the spacecraft or the launch itself. But I'm not going to get into all that. Again, I'm probably not even going to specifically, I'm not going to again try to launch every single one as it's launched. Just a basic demonstration of what they did. the major changes that happened, and that sort of thing. And so yeah, the Russians had the Vostok program, and this year is only going to see the test launches of their human rated spacecraft, rated for one human. However, when the Russians send it up, they send up dogs, and this year they do successfully retrieve 2 dogs from space that become pretty famous dogs, Strelka and their name, Belka and Strelka, I believe, are their names. But yeah, and actually, Khrushchev visits America this year as well. And they I don't know. I don't know if it's exactly at this trip, but the puppies of these dogs are delivered to the American president. Eisenhower is the president at this point, by the way. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna check out the comment section. Yes. So back to our timeline here. So yeah, that was the Project Echo, which was like I said, these balloons that were trying to bounce satellites off of. Yeah, Belka and Strelka were those dogs, the dags. So going into January. Oh yeah, and I wanted to kind of also finish. I was talking about my 1960 review. So in the year 1960, the cost of a new house average in America was $12,000. A gallon of gas was 25 cents. New car was $2,600. A loaf of bread was 20 cents. And so I'm just looking through. So Jupiter, these are nuke tests that we're seeing in January, and it's not until let's see, when is their actual first orbital launch that we're going to get here? I believe it's going to be the Discovery. Oh no, is this actually no? We're up in the March already. There's got to be one before that. And we can see also how high each of these rockets are going for each of these tests. You can see each of these tests, like they're launching these things 6 miles up in the air, 320 miles. I mean, that's space. I believed. Oh yeah. So there's this Discoverer 9. So all these Discoverer satellites were basically, you can see that these were put into polar orbit. And the Discovery satellites, they were launched on Thor Agena rockets. If you recall, my last video, I had designed our Thorn Agenda rockets because they named they named them Discoverer to sort of make it low key that these were spy satellites, and the true name of the program was called the Corona program. And the purpose of polar orbit is so that as it's orbiting the Earth on a polar scale, that's going up and down rather than right to left, or and at that point, it's going to get a view of the entire planet as it's rotating. So yeah, that's the first thing I'm going to do, actually, because a whole lot of those were launched this year in 1960. There was a lot of failures as well of these Discoverer spy satellites. And basically what those seem to have looked like at this point was it simply used the top part of the Agena rocket. You can see how big the human is compared to it. Yeah, and there was like 15 of these launched this year. So already within a few years, I mean, the military was all over spaceflight, rocketry. I mean, they were ready. They had not to mention, and I didn't really mention this last time for 1959. The announcement of the Mercury 7 crew, and that's the human rated flight for the American human manned space flight. These were the first 7 astronauts, and they're really wacky suits. Now, what these suits are pressure suits. These aren't supposed to be space suits. or moonwalking suits. But these are actually pressure suits, I believe, actually, anyway. But it looks like it's what they would be, which makes sense. They're when we're talking about these different space suits, really there's going to be because even the Air Force pilots wear pressure suits. Once you get up that high, there's no pressure, and then it's going to start doing bad things to your body, because your body is only meant to be held together by the pressure of basically sea level. But yeah, so in the last year, 1959, was announced that the crew, the specifically picked pilots for the Mercury program, the American manned spaceflight program, the Mercury program. The next one is called the Gemini program, or Gemini program. That's where they're launching 2 people up. First one here, though, is Mercury, and there are 7 launches that they do, and these are the test launches where, the first one is just, it's not even an orbital launch. It's just launching straight up and down. This year they're testing those rockets. I might do one, but I haven't quite looked into them yet, because I know that they didn't actually get them up yet this year. And they also used a whole bunch of different types of rockets within this Mercury program. And those will be called, like, they use a Redstone rocket, or they use an Atlas rocket. So one launch will be called the Mercury Redstone or the Mercury Atlas, that sort of thing. Because at this point, they're still working on it. And there are stories of these guys going to visiting the launch pad, like right before they get hired or whatever, and they're just launching these rockets, and they're exploding left and right. And these guys are just like, wow, like we're supposed to launch on these things. It's ridiculous. So yeah, so also just moving on from 1960. Hey, what's up, Jim? Good to see you, man. I was just saying, so yeah, new house 1960, $12,000. New car $2,600. New house in Great Britain was apparently 2,500 pounds. That's crazy. OPEC was created, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. It's like the Aswan Dam that began. Obviously, President of the U.S. was Eisenhower. So yeah, anyway, so I was going to get a spy satellite launched into polar orbit really quickly, just to get some space happening here. What am I doing here? I'm over I'm in the airport. I gotta switch to the. Yeah, so looking at the Discoverer satellites, again, they were being put into polar orbit. This one was a failure, but there were many of these launched this year, and the polar orbits were meant for the camera to take pictures. And also, this year was the first time that they successfully did recover this film from space, and they actually caught it from an airplane. Which I guess I'm going to have to. I'm not going to try to launch it from an airplane, but I am going to have to design one, and I'm going to successfully have it deorbit and just launch on it with a parachute. Because once they have something that's transmitting a radio signal, anyway, Thor Agena. So again, we have the Thor Agena. So there we go. So here's our Thor rocket. Should be good for polar orbit. Yeah, polar orbits are basically more difficult to get into. They require more thrust, more fuel. For a lot of places, like for example, in modern day India, their most powerful rocket that they use to send stuff to the moon. India says send stuff to Mars at this point. That rocket that they use is their polar launcher, because they also have their own satellites that are capable of polar launches. Same thing with, my point is, once you get to the point where you can launch polar satellites, then you can send stuff to Mars. You could send stuff outside of Earth's gravity at that point. Theoretically, you're at that point. That's like reaching warp. So anyway, the top stage of our, and I believe I did design this before, so I don't think I'm going to go too crazy with. And I don't have a lot of science. Oopsie, a lot of science unlocked yet. Whoa, that's pretty big. So this is just going to simulate a camera taking pictures in polar orbit and being excuse me, and being retrieved from orbit. So let's get to it. And this is one of the discoveries. This will be one of the what should I call it here? So that one's a discovery in real life, where it's Corona. I'm just going to call it Rona. It's secret mission, so it's going to be the Rona X5 mission. It's just I'm going to spy on some. So let's check my staging real quick. We got that. We got that. That's just going to need to separate somehow. Uh-oh. I don't see a separation. There's a problem here. So that launch would have been destroyed. We better fix that. Good thing I checked. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna put some music on. Hey, what's up, little wolf? Great to see you. Where is? All right, just a moment. I apologize for the delay, but I want to put on some form of background music, so that the points when I don't talk, everything just doesn't sound like it's been put to a grinding halt, like it already is right now. And I'm going to try to put on music from 1960s. I was kind of hesitant too, since a lot of this is going to involve Soviet launches, and I don't really have a lot of music that I can find from Soviet era in 1960, other than some like just really well. If you want to look that stuff up, go right ahead. 60. It's hopefully I will end up talking enough to where I don't get any kind of strike. I need just 1960, not the 60s, but 1960. All right, this should do it. Alrighty. This song is from Animal House. Okay, so let's hope that I don't get some kind of a strike. So if I can talk over this to the point where I don't need to worry about it. Okay, time for a polar launch. So we got Verona X5. We got our staging. Oh yeah, I still need to fix the. Where is this separated? Separating up here. We need a small decoupler. Yeah, that would have been bad. Okay, we had that decoupler, which is now up there. Okay, Lona X ready to launch. I'm assuming this launched from Florida. What does it say? Vandenberg. Oh, is this launched from California? So more of a desert launch site. So I'm going to launch this from the desert just for the heck of it. All right, got some nice taking my spy satellite out on a date through the desert side. This music is just I was trying to find some really obscure rockabilly stuff, but which I still might put on. Alrighty, so we are in the desert. So I'm gonna get a polar launch. Let's see. Last time I tried it, I did a successful polar launch. I accidentally went southward, but it doesn't really matter. Once you're in polar orbit, you're there. So we're gonna zoom out a bit, and there's our whole planet, and all the way down. Oh boy, yeah, that's not gonna work. That music ain't gonna work. What did I have on here now? See, I don't want to start getting like soul playing. It's gonna start mixing all the eras together. I think I'm just gonna put some Baroque music back on just to be safe. All right, let's see what do we got here. 1960s. See, 60s doesn't work because the 60s is such a varied era of music. The twist dancing. Oh boy, I should have planned this. This is the thing that I forgot to mess around with was the music. Not cool. All right, let's see how this works. All right, this is fine. Okay, I'm finished that little mental sidetrack. Oh boy. Oh yeah, you're right, Kevin. If it has you, I should probably look into that. Probably must instead of wasting my time, wasting everybody's time. Oh, I tighten one up. Alrighty. Anyway, back to the. Alright, so let's get this thing up. I'm gonna activate. We do have some stability assist system on this one, so this is not quite a primitive rocket like our earlier ones a few years back. So that's gonna get loud. So let's. Oh man, what's going on there? That's really slow. So I'm not sure. Well, let's. So I kind of just grabbed any old Thor Agena. So probably should have found the last successful launch on the Thor Agena because I probably named it that. But this is definitely not going fast enough. All right, I'm going to revert this. Revert to vehicle assembly. This is the reality of rocket flight, people. Well, I am going to save it as Rona X5. However, let's see if there is anything that I had launched recently on something else, like the. I don't think so. Maybe not. Maybe not. We got that. Nah, something's got to change here. I got to adjust it in some way because that engine speed is not cool. What's the Pioneer? No. I think I'm going to make this lighter. I'm going to decrease the amount of fuel, because I probably don't need all that fuel. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'll decrease this as well. It's really going to be all about the. All right. Well, let's try it. Because it probably would have made it into orbit, maybe, but it would have taken forever, and I'd rather just make some adjustments and see what's happening. Oh, I'm at the wrong spot. Oh well. Let's just get it up there. Still good. Still really slow. I can tell it's a little faster. So I am going to face it northward. We are picking up speed pretty well. So the original one was probably pretty slow as well because these were the big guys. Although the Thor rocket, remember the Thor one was designed as the intermediate range ballistic missile. Well, this thing might topple over. We don't pick up speed soon. All right. So we're still increasing speed, which is fine. You can see down here the speed is ever increasing. Speed is going faster, and just as a little physics thing, as that speed is increasing, it's not decreasing, it's increasing. So as long as it's not, I mean, nothing's really ever neutral. As long as it's you're building up kinetic energy there. This is what's causing you to fling yourself up in this area. So if I go to the map, hopefully it doesn't mess up you can see the arc happening. You can see this is the trajectory of where we're heading. This is where we came from. This is where we're going. This is the predicted arc of where we will go. Assuming nothing slams into it or it explodes, this is what's going to happen. Same way if you throw a football up, the same way if you shoot a bullet up in the air, and this is where these things are going. Now, the higher we're getting, and still, again, we're going faster and faster. We're increasing speed. And this, when we get out to the point where there isn't any air to slow us down, like we're just about getting there, where we're getting out of the air region. Now at this point, however, because we're picking up speed is why we're starting to get this glow. Now our first engine's about to cut out and run out of steam. Now at this point, however, I'm going to sit here for a second. Our arc, this is where we are right now. And our arc, we're still going to go up until this point, which is 98 miles. We're right here. We're down here at 52. We're about to get up to 98. And that's the highest point where we're going to get. Unless we add more speed, unless we add more energy, which is what we're going to do when we activate the second stage of this. Now, I could try to plan the maneuver, but I'm just going to do it manually. Oh, this is going to be strange because I'm actually not used to doing a polar orbit, so I don't even know if I've already messed this up. This certainly isn't a polar orbit. I'm going to... Let's do that. So, because last time I unlocked one of the tracking stations, what it does is it lets you plan maneuvers. So what this is doing is it's showing me where I'm going to. Right now, this is still what's happening. That green line is where I am currently falling because I'm going through the sky right now. Free fall and still heading upward. Now, right now, as soon as I hit it, this is going to tell me which direction I need to face this thing in order to get into the proper heading here. Because the goal is to change there, because I'm changing to a polar orbit, which is that up and down orbit. All right, so I'm about to hit the area where here's what's called a maneuver node in the game. Again, in real life, this was people sitting around with pieces of paper and calculators. So I need to move this thing within. Where my maneuver node is, which is right here. Oh boy, get back. See, I don't have too good control over this. If I had some... The reason I can remove this is there's reaction wheels. So I think that's as good as we're going to get. There we go. So what we're doing is changing. We're facing a different direction, but we're adding energy, so we're still increasing our speed. But we're also... There we go. We're changing our trajectory. And again, we're looking at this as, again, everything, all the numbers having to do with this is telemetry data. I mean, this isn't, I mean, it's as it were in real life. Oh boy. We're out of fuel. We did not make orbit. We didn't make orbit. That's because we didn't. Well, that's cool. In real life, the thing didn't make orbit either. But we did successfully demonstrate what a failed polar orbit looks like. Because the original orbit is a, or was a, that's what I did wrong, was I didn't aim straight for the up and down, north-south trajectory to begin with. And so I had to take up more fuel in order to shift that. That's a lot of fuel that it's taking to change, which that's the inclination of your orbit there. So at this point, I am straight up going to land in the North Pole. Now I could just cheat and add some fuel to it, but whatever. I'm not gonna do that. Let's deploy. We can still take some science before we crash. Well, you know what? Actually, this thing has a parachute. So this thing, oh, you know, I'm remembering. I needed to add a heat shield. So even if I got this thing in orbit, it wouldn't have survived re-entry. All right, let's get some science done. So the goal here is, because I'm not going as fast, because again, I didn't make up enough speed to get into orbit. Therefore, I might be going slow enough to re-enter without burning up, without a heat shield, because I don't have any heat shielding on this thing at all. This thing is just, but it might still be going slow enough to survive, because I did remember to put a parachute on it, because we can log some science. Now, right now, this is logging stuff from the upper atmosphere, and I can. Do I have a radio on this thing? I can transmit. There's no comms on this thing. I really made this thing a dud. But it doesn't matter, as long as I can take readings and then retrieve the thing, if this parachute works. But yeah. So just to look back at the map, we're now at the other side of our arc, which was back here over the planet. Now this has changed a bit, because this is going to shift as the planet's moving. And as I also mentioned, that type of rocket that was used there is the Thor. There's a bunch of the Atlas. There's all these different types of rockets, but those larger carrier rockets, if you could imagine a nuclear warhead being strapped onto that, you can see that it would carry one of those to the other side of the planet if it wanted to. Incidentally, in the year 1960, they started to basically perfect submarine launch rockets, where they launch rockets from the water, like basically 12 at a time. Uh-oh. Here we are entering the atmosphere. Can I actually get some science here? We already have data. So I can keep it. Doesn't seem to be getting heated up too much more, so I think we might be cool. Still heading into the planet's poles. So we sent this thing into a polar suborbital trajectory. So we didn't make orbit, so it became suborbital. All the thing was in a ballistic arc, so it became just a ballistic. It went down in ballistic free fall. Oh, and this is getting a bit hotter, I can see. Where's our temperature? Nothing's exploded. There should be. I thought there was a thermometer. Did I not even put a thermometer on this? I'm blaming those Kerbals. Those cheap Kerbals didn't even put a thermometer. Oh no, there it is right here. Oh, no, it's not. I'm seeing things. That's going to land in the dark. That's pretty boring. So let's just deploy it. Our parachute cell to deploy when we're like 600 feet up. Nah, let's do. All right, and we're gonna fast forward a bunch since we can't even see what's going on. It's gonna be pretty lame. So I'm gonna fast forward as much as we can, so you can see it falling there. And at some point, I do want to retrieve it in that way, because I am playing a career mode game. That way, all of the stuff that I leave sitting around is gonna stay around. So I was designing World War II stuff, so sitting around is still a bunch of World War II airplanes and stuff. I guess that's ice. So it looks like water. What is the North Pole? So North Pole is a lot of ice and also sea. There's our parachute. That has worked. So we'll at least get a little bit of science back from that. Theoretically, they would have taken cameras. Now, also theoretically, as I said, this year in 1960, they retrieved one of these polar satellites. Yeah, I need to put. So I'm going to try to launch another one of these successfully with enough fuel in it to actually deorbit itself, which I don't think should be too difficult. I think, assuming this thing doesn't all just take ridiculously long. All right, let's get this thing downward. Let's see. As I said, President Eisenhower was so this year also they revised the Civil Rights Act. A lot of civil rights stuff happening in the year 1960. There was a previous 1957, I believe, or Civil Rights Act that had happened, but there's a lot of loopholes in it, as usual, and people were trying to get that done. There was a notion of that year a Boynton versus Virginia, which is where. Oh wait, I was going to fast forward this. A black man sued and won a court case against the state of Virginia, basically declaring that segregation of public transport is against the law. How about that? 1960. All right, so let's recover that vessel. Also, that year, there lots of demonstrations against the development of the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons. Excuse me. Okay, I'm gonna warp to sunrise. What do we actually have going on? This year, they also announced Vietnam escalating. Now America already had troops in Vietnam, and like just doing their stuff. And I believe I think it was the previous year, 1959, where these hardcore attacks started to happen from Chinese or North Vietnam armed people doing incursions from the north to the south, all that kind of stuff, and so America starts. So that's when the Vietnam War really started escalating. At that point, in 1960 was when the rumors of that war really started to increase heavily. Alrighty, so what am I going to launch here next for 1960? So again, we just did a. Oh boy! All right, so we have a Pioneer. Okay, the Pioneer 5. I'm thinking I should get some kind of a new microphone. So the Pioneer series of probes. Okay, let's get that up. I might have to design that a bit. These streams are not going to be exciting, I think. Basically just me playing around with this stuff, but hopefully it's educational maybe, as it is fun for me. So the Pioneer was launched. Also, we're in March already. Yeah, so going back to February a bit of this year, 1960, like I said, there are much of these Discoverer satellite. I just launched the Discoverer. I could try another one. I'll try another one later on because they launch them all throughout the year. And again, these are spy satellites, so the military was hungry to be able to take pictures from polar orbit, and we're doing it a lot. Incidentally, also this year, a U-2 spy plane of America's was shot down over Russia. Because at that point, we had the capability of flying and taking pictures of far above the capabilities of like the Soviets to detect us. However, if something went wrong, yeah, something went wrong basically. And this guy, whose last name was Powers, was shot down over Russia, and he was put on trial. And this year was his court date, and he was sentenced. So these Discover satellites were pretty heavily done. So I'll get back to doing one of those successfully. But anyway, getting up to March 11th, the Pioneer program. So we had some previous Pioneer probes that tried to get around the moon, to try to go into to circumlunar orbit. And so the Pioneer was basically was concentrating on the deep space type of stuff versus orbiting the planet. And the Pioneer 5 interplanetary was launched towards the planet Venus. Now this one it continued to send data. It was only launched towards Venus. Doesn't look like it really did much, but so therefore it shouldn't take much to launch it out towards Venus. If that's as close as I need to get. Because I know next year, 1961, the Soviets actually do a flyby of Venus, which is going to be interesting. So yeah, so that early, they're already flying by planets, and they're able to plot out. Because again, the planets, their orbits and their motions, the stars and the motions of the planets, they don't change. So you just takes math to figure this stuff out. So the Pioneer 5 mission was launched on a Thor Able. So this is a Thor Agena. So I need a Thor Able. Now I have a Thor. Now I already did a Pioneer. Pioneered 4. Here we go. Now I kind of went in and designed a Pioneer 5, but I didn't finish it because I realized that's what I was going to make this stream much earlier, but I realized there's a whole lot of things I didn't want to kind of just do just really poorly, even though all this is kind of poor anyway. But so this is my horror. This is my Pioneer 5 probe. It kind of looks like the real one. But that was the thing I had to go and unlock because the game doesn't give you a lot of stock parts that are going to correlate properly. So this is, but in any case, if you look at the real probe, it doesn't look too bad. So now I don't have a lot of the science unlocked, but if basically at this stage in our science career, any science from interplanetary space is going to be useful. So again, I'm just going to put a thermometer to measure space temperature because there's nothing on here for measuring cosmic rays or cosmic particles per se in the game. So I can just pretend that this temperature gauge is just measuring cosmic temperatures, right? And cosmic pressure, because that's what this is, a temperature gauge and a pressure gauge. I could add the mystery goo, but I feel like that messes up the weight unless I put them all over the place, and I don't want to start going crazy with that just yet. So I think we'll be fine with these two pieces of science. That's basically going to be it for this Pioneer 5. It's got solar panels. I added a battery. I just unlocked this type of battery, which it holds electric charge. Now I'm going to clip those into themselves to make it more compact. And now I also need to add a good radio. Now, here's the thing. I haven't played this in a while, and in stock, I'm not sure how well these communication things. So a lot of this is going to be testing also how good these communitrons operate. Because I'm only planning to add, I believe the real one I only saw one large antenna on top of this thing. I wonder if that's not going to work. That's too big. So I'm just going to put one. but I'm gonna put it on the top to make it look a little better. Because again, I'm not trying to make it. If I was trying to make everything look perfect the way it really did in real life, okay, because I'm not using the real solar system mod, and it's very tempting to just download the real versions, because I know there's somewhere out there there's real versions of every single one of these things, and I could just go on and. But again, a lot of this is just fun for me to just try to build my own crappy little version of it. Because otherwise, I would just have to try to exactly get the right orbit, the right inclination that it was in, and it would stop being fun. So there's a lot of it's just once it's at this point. Once it's at this point, I'm just admitting that it's like not a big deal, so I don't start getting very crazy, obsessive, compulsive over it. All right, so we're fine here. So I'm gonna let's adjust these just a little bit. I don't like how those corners are hanging out. There we go. We're gonna retract that. And I'm going to pull this up into, down into there. Actually, I kind of wanted to do it like that. I think we'll just have to leave it like that. Yes, that's fine. All right, so this is going to be our Pioneer 5. All right, so let's save that. Now we need to get this onto a rocket. And again, this was on a Thor Able rocket. I had a Thor. I believe it's the right one. The Thor ain't. I think that was the same one I launched on this other Pioneer. Excuse me. So, oh no. Oh, this is like a Juno rocket. Thor ain't so dumb. I think that's the right one. Whatever. Here's my Thor Able replica. Just because I know the Able rocket was much thinner, but it's all solid fuel. I mean, I'm sorry, it's all liquid fuel at the top. But that's what the engine is. The engine was of sort that burns very slow once you're in a vacuum, and it allows for. Anyway, so what I need to do is merge the Pioneer 5 I just made. So there it is, little guy. And we need to put him into this, which means, well, hold on. First of all, let's link that up. Let's tell this whole thing now. The root of this entire array is this. Now we can get rid of that, whatever that was. I think that was the old Pioneer. There we go. Now I just need to adjust this payload fairing so that it's not. All right. It looks really stupid, but there's only a few sizes I can get with the diameters with the stock game. And I want to try to make them correlate as the rockets evolve. Because, again, all of these different satellites are designed. There's many different ones. However, the same basic rockets maintain the same. So once I've gotten the specific, like the Thor rocket or the Atlas rocket, I want to kind of just keep those as they are, and that way I just load them up, and then I put the different satellite bus on top. The same way with a lot of the specific satellite models, maintain the same depending on the program. The Soviets did that a lot too. The Soviet, like the Martian probes, the Venus probes, and their lunar probes, some of them looked like pretty much identical, with just a couple changes, and they just evolved very slowly. But with a lot of it was just made modular, so that you could just take off different pieces as they evolved up. I don't think it's too late. I'm not gonna look now. I don't think it did. I don't think this thing had its own propulsion on it. I think this thing was just launched out and. Now I want to. Now I needed to know. So if it had its own propulsion, I need to give it its own propulsion. See, there's our Discoverer. What year was this guy launched? Our Pioneer 5 in March. So we got to get all the way over in March. Look at all of these launches. Atlas, Agena. All of these most of these are nuke tests. These guys are just nuke crazy. I mean, talk about the Cold War and people being afraid. Like, people should have been afraid. These guys are nuts. This was the only flight of the Thor Able 4. That still looked dumb. See, the real one looked dumb too. That's the real Thor Able. It looks kind of. See, it was real thin. Like, so yeah. Mine looks just as dumb as that one. So that's fine. And where did it go? March 11th. Get up there. The Pioneer 5. Did it have? I'm trying to find if it had its own propulsion. Boost your performance was blah blah blah. Doesn't look like it had its own propulsion. Looks like it's just meant to float around. Reminds me. Look at this. The solar panels are ridiculous. Reminds me of the Lost in Space robot. Warning, Will Robinson. Those are solar panels. Yeah, I don't see anything about. So yeah, I'm just here. I go second guessing myself as usual. I don't see. Let's see. We got batteries. We got circuit transmitter, 5-watt, 512 hertz subcarrier, which in turn amplitude modulated to 64.8 or 1 bits per second. This thing was beepity beepity beep. In common with Explorer 6. So I should have already designed this thing long ago. Although I don't think, did this thing actually get anywhere? I think this would have failed. Hope not. I didn't launch anything like this. At least successfully. Took the first, 1959. I must, the first photos of Earth from a satellite. It was last year. Anyway, let's move on. So anyway, we're going to launch this guy from, or to, Venus. Or to, I'm not going to work. Well, let me get this thing on the launch pad here and shut up. We still need to get to the Vostok. We've already been going for an hour. Wow. Yes, is this the program that North Korea built their rockets from? North Korea probably got theirs would resemble. I mean, it's going to resemble either the Russian ones or the Chinese ones. Probably the Chinese. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of their designs would come from the Chinese, which in turn came from the Russian stuff. The basic design. There's a point where I was looking because the North Korea only has 2 basic models of their orbital rocket launcher, and it's basically just like it's a very basic 2-stage liquid fuel deal, which in general it's generally it could be used to launch like satellites and that sort of thing as well, if designed well. As far as the way that it delivers telemetry and the way that it responds, the parts that are on it, and who's operating it. Actually, this year, 1960, which is what I'm doing here, Japan started launching its first sounding rockets. I'm guessing it's on a national level because it's listed there. Where Japan was using these very pretty small. So let me check the staging real quick. Pretty small solid rocket motors. This is interesting. I do have solids. I have solid fuel on the top level of this. It's interesting. All right, let's get us in orbit. So this thing was going. So this was specifically sent to scan the interplanetary space between Earth and Venus. So if we, let me get this thing stable. We're rising up. We're gaining speed. This thing is really slow. So we can see on our map here, there's the arc that we're taking, really slowly rising up. And we need to get a lot faster. So we're still gaining speed. This thing is just set to burn pretty slowly because it's a single stage. Well, no, it's not. What am I saying? It's not single. This single type of rocket, the Thor being its only stage, that part of it was originally the nuke because it wasn't meant to get anything to orbit. It was just meant to launch itself far enough across the face of the planet to deliver a bomb. All right, adjusting this. Our speed is really exponentially increasing. Now we were coming up at like 200 meters a second. Now we're at 800 meters a second. So the higher we get, the less atmospheric drag we're going to get, and the faster we're going to get. I think we're not going to have any trouble making orbit here. Our apoapsis. Now remember, our apoapsis is our highest point we're going to reach. So here's our ballistic trajectory, steadily rising as we steadily increase our energy. We're increasing our kinetic energy by adding basically we're transferring all that rocket fuel into kinetic energy. Oops. And now our first stage is out of fuel. So we're down here still, but because we have this kinetic energy built up in the form of velocity, so that means we're just steadily going up there. So this is just like you've been thrown from the hand of and now you're heading up. So the highest this is going to reach is 261 miles as per our just simulated game. So here is what that looks like as an arc coming off of the planet. Now, essentially, it's going to, if I didn't do anything, it would come right back down and crash. Now we have a couple more stages because, again, this thing is trying to get out into, so we're going to zoom out a bit from our planet there. So here's our theoretical orbit. You see the other half of the orbit just goes into the planet because but we need to go all the way out to, so here's our solar system, which, it's not quite like the real one, but now the solar system is flat, planar, basically. Because as far as like centrifugalness goes, it makes sense. I mean, if something is spinning around, it's going to cause centrifugal radiation, as it were. So the inner planets being Venus, Mercury, the sun in the very middle. So this is the direction we're going to send this thing in. Now I haven't played this in a while, especially to the point where I'm launching stuff. Boy, I hope I'm not too high to where I'm. Now I'm still have a bit to this thing. So it's going very, very fast. Still, we're going like 1,300 meters a second, and you can't really tell if you're just on here. Now we're gonna break off. Should have did this before. Decouple this. Okay, so we've broken off our. Now the real life ones are going to be like some of them are spin stabilized. I know I've seen a video where you see somebody uses a sounding rocket in order to well, they launch it up and they attach a GoPro to it, and you can see it spinning and spinning and spinning. And a lot of them are spun specifically to keep them stable while they are going up, because as they're going up faster and as the engines are going and you're adding velocity, having it spinning around causes it to be stable. And then these things will actually shoot out like two different kind of yo-yo things on the side, which then spin around in order to stop it from spinning really quickly. Because actually, on a lot of these spy satellites, for example, matter of fact, on that polar one, I watched a video done from the 1960s of it demonstrating it doing just that, because they needed to stop it from spinning in order for it to be able to take pictures, and then spin it back up in order to get it into a stable heading so that it can deorbit to where they want it to deorbit to. So now I kind of be interested if they bothered getting into an orbit first, or if they. But I am going to get into an orbit first, so I don't want to lose. That's fine. So what I did was just planned a maneuver. So you can see the green is where I'm still heading, up and down, because I just launched it up and right down. Now at this point, this maneuver, I just told it I'm going to face this particular direction so that it's going to change this green where I'm going from that. It's going to increase it to this, to where I'll be in orbit. So my ballistic arc will turn into an orbit by expanding out beyond the borders of the curvature of the planet. So that maneuver says it's going to happen in a minute or so. Deploy that by now. In space, so we don't have to worry about drag, so all this stuff is pretty much protected. There's our guy back there. That's going to be destroyed. We're going to move this. Okay. There's something I can use to fast forward to the. Made it here, and we'll do that. And let's. Oh, what's happening? Oh, I didn't turn the rocket on. Oh man, this thing is so weak. That's right. This is the really weak engine. Well, it's a good opportunity to demonstrate the. So again, this is the maneuver that's planned. So it's kind of to tell me a guideline of how well it's going to take for me to match up with it. Now it's slowly happening, but you can see my ballistic arc. Because again, imagine if you put a engine on a baseball that you threw. Because obviously you can imagine if you throw a baseball into it's always going to be an arc. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. But if you made it to where it somehow was able to increase its speed while it was at the very top of that arc, then you're going to increase its ballistic arc, obviously. That's what we're doing here. And since we are on a globe here, you can see that eventually that arc is going to go over. And again, we're still going, because what we're still doing is increasing our speed. We were at 1,300 miles, meters a second, rather. Now we're 1,600 meters a second. We're still increasing speed by a lot, because our speed has never gone down since we've gotten up into our ballistic arc. An eye down here at the. So our apoapse is as high as we'll get, and the periapse is as low as we'll get. Right now, our periapse is still negative, meaning you can see it's still in the planet. But we want our periapse to become positive, which it just did. So now we have a periapse, which, as you can see, is increasing. Now our periapse is 30, 40, 45. Now say that those are miles. Once it reaches 70, we're in space. So now our periaps and our apoapse isn't getting too much higher. So now you can see our green area is it's in circulars around the planet. So that's fine. That's fine. So we can leave that there for a second. So we are in a stable. Now normally we would call this a parking orbit because this orbit will stay there. So this is where a satellite's going to stay there and it's going to do its thing. I'm going to plan a maneuver to get this going. Now, again, so far in the past couple of years, from 1958 to 1959, well, 1958 was the first time that they did the orbit. So in 1959 is when the Soviets had first launched a probe towards the moon, specifically to try to impact it. They flew by it, but it left the gravitational influence of Earth, and it went out and became an artificial planet because it just left. Once it leaves the gravitational influence of Earth, it's still orbiting the sun. Nothing's going to stop orbiting the sun. In order to reach to leave the entire influence of that circulates, because everything that's orbiting the sun is going as fast as it is that it needs to be orbiting the sun. Everybody, everything's created there. It's born that way. We are born. Every person on the planet is still going as fast as the planet is already spinning. So even when we launch off of the planet, we're still borrowing that velocity from the planet. The only thing that we're adding to it is to be able to get up enough speed and energy to be going up higher to add that velocity. To add that energy to get farther out. But in order to do that, we need to add to increase speed so much. The only way you do it is by burning all that rocket fuel. And so I'm going to try to plan this maneuver towards Venus really quick. So this is my maneuver node showing you the up, down, left, right, all the different directions. So my normal orbit is green. So the yellow ones are the thrust backwards. So if I were to turn around, you could see this would decrease my orbit until I'm gonna. That's if I would do a backwards thrust or turn around and thrust. But if I face forward, that's what the yellow face forward and increase. You can see from my orbit's going to bulge out because I'm increasing the speed and energy. Now, if I move where I'm doing this, you can see how that gets adjusted to the other side of my orbit. If I'm right here and I face this certain direction and increase my speed and energy, it's increasing over here. It's not like the same as being on the ground because there's no. It's all relative speeds. It's only relative to something else. So this is relative to its own orbit. So at some point, if I increase my velocity, increase my energy, using the rocket fuel again, increasing, burning, eventually it's going to get to the point where its orbit is going to go beyond the orbit of the gravity of the planet and beyond. Now, again, in this game, our planet has 2 moons. I usually ignore the Minimus moon and just use this one as our own moon. And I do kind of use this sometimes as the Lagrange points. So if there's a real life the spacecraft that went to a Lagrange point, I'll send it in orbit of Minimus. So anyway, I'm going to see how close I can get this to Venus. So already, here's where I'm heading. If I increase, if I change this, now there are preferred angles. There are preferred areas to where you want to wait for what's called a launch window. In other words, it's the maximized area, the maximized distance between. So our planet here is Eve. So this would be Venus. Now there's a maximized distance of where this is to where. And just imagine if you're trying to throw a ball to hit another moving ball. You're going to need to time it You know, if you've ever shot a gun that's on a moving target, you know, you need to lead it. I mean, we're talking about leading up an entire planet that's millions of miles away. So if I increase my speed, so what I'm eventually this is going to get close enough to the planet where I can see it being. Let's see. Let me select that as my target. So now this is going to give me some references. Here's closest approach to each of that. So if I shrink this around, see, that's the most. I used to be able to do this in like no time at all. I can't remember anymore. Let's see. There we go. I know I'm increasing it there. Right there, we're almost hitting it. That's a 2-minute burn. That's crazy. I'm not going to sit through all that. We need to change that engine on that thing. So, is there a better way to do this? Let's see. We got to make it merge up. Let me start over. This is the way I used to do it. I never even had to zoom in. Just add a maneuver and increase it out. Boom. And make it to where it's as least big as it needs to be. So it's as energy is efficient. Down here, our burn time. We need as short as burn time as possible. So that short burn time doesn't even give us an outside of the orbit. So let's increase it a little bit more, which I just done. Still not out of the influence. Now we're out of the influence. Now how close can I possibly get to Venus? Yeah, we're not in a good launch window. But we don't need to be, because the real life one didn't really I'm kind of curious. Maybe I should. You know what I'm gonna do? You know what I'm gonna do? Kerbin Eve launch window. Yep. I'm gonna do it. So I know there used to be a very, very cool, easy to use site. No. Okay. Well, and I'm going to show what a transfer window looks like. Transfer window. Oh boy. As I was saying, is the optimal distance and movement between two of those two planets in motion. KSP. Oh, I wonder if that's just doesn't exist anymore. The old Oh, you know what? It was calculator. There we go. This is exactly what I was looking for. So for Kerbin, destination Eve, our park in orbit is about 300 miles. Do the math. So we need Eve to be all the way down there. Wow. That's origin Kerbin. Yep. Destination Eve. We need Eve to be all the way down there. Well, I know we're going to need to launch some other spacecrafts toward. Wow. That would basically involve me fast forwarding this for a couple months into the game. I mean, it wouldn't take that long in order for Eve to get all the way over here, which is the optimal launch window. in order for it to spend the less amount of fuel for when I because remember, right now I'm already in orbit of the planet. Let me zoom back in from the map here. Zoom, 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 zoom. There's the planet. Here's my orbit. And again, when I increase my speed, because I still have these rocket fuels left, it's going to bulge out my orbit until I've broken the orbit, broken the sphere of influence of the planet I'm orbiting, and I'm gonna just go out to where whatever new direction I'm heading. And the direction in this case is going to be the planet. Actually, I tell you what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up these solar panels. That way, this is not going to. I mean, I could just cheat and turn on the infinite electricity, but every time I do that, I just feel dirty. So we got some solar panels on this thing. So I'm gonna. Now, what we really would have done is, in real life, they would have not launched this thing unless they knew it was the proper window. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, we got Kerbals. They don't even use the bathroom. So I'm gonna fast forward. Let's see, how long would that take? I'm fast forwarding big time. You can't even tell. So if I fast forward as much as it'll go, you can see Kerbin going all the way over. We don't got that much longer. Now here's the thing. I'm not even going to try that. I shouldn't even be trying that hard on this because it doesn't really get that close. I'm not even going to. I didn't look and see how far it does get from Venus, but the only goal was to get it in between the space. So this is probably just a little bit much to be doing it this way. Matter of fact, just in case I miss the next launch window, because I know there's a Soviet one next year where they do a flyby. I don't want to end up missing that. So I think as long as I'm just going to get it a little bit closer to the preferred launch window, which is it being right around here, whatever the degrees that is. And then I'm going to launch it. So we've just gone almost a year in game time, which is fine because a lot of the stuff I'm doing within game time, as it were, would only have been weeks, even though I've launched a whole bunch of stuff within succession. So a lot of that stuff doesn't really. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so I still have two stages. I still have this stage, which is this really slow rocket, although it burns slow enough to where it'll get us to where it needs to go. The final stage is a solid fuel, which that might cause problems, but it doesn't matter. Again, here's me being just over analytical. All right, so now let's see where our launch maneuver can get us with the least amount of fuel possible. We should at least be getting closer. This isn't quite the optimal launch window, but it should be close enough. We got that. That's interesting. It's going to go way out to there. You can see, as long as we get it there, you can see that we've gotten it to, because here's the thing, when we're launching something towards the sun, and here's the thing that is very counterintuitive. When you're launching something towards the sun, it takes a lot more energy because you're essentially trying to decrease your natural orbit that already exists of the sun, because the Earth is already orbiting the sun at a certain amount of speed. So in order to send something actually into the sun, you would essentially have to deorbit it from the sun, because everything essentially is an orbit of the sun. Everything within the solar system is orbiting the sun, with the exception of, I know a couple years ago something flew through the solar system from outside the solar system. It went out and it just left. It had nothing to do with any of this gravity that was happening. It was just it was doing something else. It was orbiting something else. Essentially, everything is moving relative to everything else. Um, so if like I remember the movie Airplane 2, where they're on a space shuttle heading towards the moon, and somebody hijacks the shuttle and just randomly turns the thing towards the sun. And like, we're heading straight towards the sun, as if in order for something to just simply get launched towards the sun, because the sun's gravity doesn't matter. Because if you're already in orbit around the sun, like our planet is, um, so even if so, if in other words, the planet, let's say the planet and the moon are both orbiting around the sun at the same rate. So when you travel yourself on a rocket or something from the Earth to the moon, yourself, the Earth, and the moon are still orbiting the sun at the same distance relatively. So that doesn't matter. But in order to get you towards closer to the sun, you got to decrease your orbit big time. Now we've recently sent stuff in orbit of the sun, or in orbit of Mercury. We just sent the Parker Solar Probe really close, but it took so much energy because if you can see just how much energy this has taken to shrink our orbit, basically, so that because you can see Venus is in a lower orbit. Venus is closer to the sun, so we basically need to shrink out whatever our spacecraft is starting from Earth orbit, or the Earth's diameter around the sun. We need to shrink it to where it's matching up with Venus's orbit. That takes a lot of energy. Now, if we were making it to Mars, which is farther out, we would need to increase our Earth orbit to make it out to Mars. But instead, we need to decrease it to where it intercepts with. Now, if we decreased it more and more, as you can see, we would eventually intercept the sun. That would take so much. Well, the spacecraft certainly wouldn't be able to do it anyway, and not a lot of them have. So aside from that little diatribe, let's just get this thing off of here. I don't even know why I'm trying to get it even. All I need to do is get an interplanetary space, and we've already got some stuff in interplanetary space anyway. However, I don't think we have anything within the space between Venus and Earth, so that's kind of cool. Although I shouldn't have spent so much time on it like this. Let's just leave it at that. Node in 31 minutes. Does it let me? Oh, it does. Fast forward, time warp. So we're gonna fast forward to when the game has calculated. We do our orbit burn, which again is going to send us out into an orbit which is going to break our Earth orbit, and it's going to send our orbit out into interplanetary orbit. First, we need to face the maneuver node, which is showing up down in our little ball thingy. That. All right, that's going to be a bit. We should go off more about 1960, because again, these, aside from this Pioneer, which was an interplanetary, the Soviets also launched something towards Mars, but it crashed. It didn't even leave the launch pad, so I'm not gonna try that. But just to give you an idea, the Soviets were also, they were still we were doing this. They were launching stuff towards Mars. They actually were trying to do Mars flybys already. So in addition to the nukes, in addition to the lunar stuff hadn't necessarily gotten too much underway yet. Because again, we didn't have like the big Kennedy speech yet. Eisenhower's still president at this point. Although this year as well, there was this year, 1960, was the presidential election between Nixon and and John F. Kennedy. And I actually watched that debate not long ago, and it's very interesting watching that debate. You can really see how different things have become. All right, our orbit is good. We're gonna stop that. We're gonna, and just for the heck of it, we're gonna use our. We don't need to do this. The final stage of this rocket stage is a solid rocket booster, which is always used as what they call a kick orbiter to give it a kick stage. But we don't even need that because we're already. Our goal is just to get the interplanetary space. We're already going there, but let's hit it anyway. How far it took us away from that other guy. So we're just increasing speed ever more. And you can see where it's just, I mean, it's not doing much. This is actually taking us down towards Mercury's orbit. But it's, so yeah, it's getting super fast. Oh wow, this thing, it is getting closer to the sun. See, it's hard to judge these things. This game, all right, that's fine. I didn't quite want it to go. In real life, there would never be something that would have enough fuel left. I shouldn't even have bothered with that thing, but whatever, it's fine. So this would be the Pioneer 5 heading off into interplanetary space. Matter of fact, let's just fast forward it to get there. Oh, at some point the radio will stop. We might as well just start logging some science already. Well, we've logged that science. Let's keep going. All right, so that's getting farther and farther away. Let's fast forward it. Goodbye. Anyway, to review the orbit of that, it's now leaving the planet. It was circling the planet. We've just increased it to the point to where it's broken it, and now it's going outward, and it's going to now go into its new orbit, which is this way, which is ultimately around the sun. But we've kicked into a very elliptical orbit around the sun, like really too elliptical. And that'll stay there forever. Matter of fact, the real life one is it's out there right now. It's still in space. I doubt. Now, they could probably calculate of when it would eventually get close enough to Earth to possibly be able to detect it, because I'm sure they can detect things that are very small, that are flying through space. All right. Yeah. Also, in 1960, the movie Psycho came out. Norman Bates. To Kill a Mockingbird was published. Just for some random trivia here. All right, so we got Pioneer 5 happening. So moving on to summertime. Oh, Tyros 1. So the Tyros satellites. Yes. So we have the first weather satellite that appears to have been functional and able to take video or television rather of the Earth. This is what it looks like, covered in solar panels, and that's about how big the thing is. Took film, first film recorded of Earth, and sent back down, so they could look at clouds and stuff. It was sent up from, I believe it was the National Oceanic. Let's see. So I'm going to do that. That was put into That was not a polar orbit. Yeah, Cheer weather satellite, low Earth. It's still in orbit now. That's interesting. What was it? Apogee. So this thing was sent by 430 miles by 470 miles. So yeah, this guy was sent to really high orbit. So yeah, it's still there to this very day. And now I am going to have to design it real quick, so you're going to have to bear with me. But I know it's not going to take long. I don't even have cameras actually unlocked, so I'm going to put some pressure gauges on it and just pretend like it's a camera. Well, the game doesn't really have cameras in itself. The game has telescopes, and it does have infrared cameras, I believe, but those are really huge. They would never fit. If I'm going to try to be historically accurate in any way, I can't worry about those types of things. Was it all right? So that's on a Thor Able, another Thor Able. All right, and this, so I know I should have no trouble getting into orbit. All right, so let's say goodbye to Pioneer 5. That thing is on its way to interplanetary space in between the Sun and Earth and Venus and stuff in between. So goodbye, Pioneer 5. We're just going to go back to Space Center. Even though that orbit is really crazy that I put it in. Like, it's really getting close to the Sun. It's like below Mercury's orbit. Gotta be careful with those solid rocket kick boosters. Alrighty. So yeah, let's get the Tyros weather satellite just to kind of commemorate that. And again, that was on a Thor Able, which is kind of like already what we got here. Because like later on, like if I ever reload the game, like later, it would be cool to be able to go back, like, oh, well, let's go look at this ancient satellite that's still in orbit, like in the game. That's like a nerdy thing to do, but whatever. Because I like to keep the same, like Sputnik still in orbit in this game. And I can ever go back and see that once I've like built the space station or something. Right, so this guy, basically the Tyro satellite, Tyro 1, look like that. So we got 4 antennas coming out the bottom. There's our camera, another camera. One of them was probably a star sensor to tell which way it was facing, because that's how these things usually, well, yeah, they were able to detect light, so they could tell that they would set in them what the light should look like, so that if they weren't getting the right amount of light, they would move in a certain direction. So I'm just going to grab some solar panels, which I recently unlocked. And I'm just going to ring them around this thing. And I'm not trying to make it to look perfect. I need that many. Let's do that. Oopsie. There we got some. Oh. What is this, a hexagon or is this an octagon probe? All right, let's get that going then. Let's go there, and let's move them over like that, and we should be able to get those lined up to where they look okay. That looks kind of cool. Alrighty, and we had 4 antennas facing outward. You know what? I'm not sure how this thing was launched, but we're just going to leave it like that. This is the Kerbal version of it anyway, so we don't need it to look exact. Because what I'm worried about is the payload. Oh yeah, so the payload was downward. So those things were actually at the bottom, if I'm going to use it like this, which I do want to keep it like that. So payload, antennas, bottom. they got to be facing away. Which means I'm going to need another. It's going to be interesting. Is that going to mess it up? Is that going to mess it up? I don't think it is. Usually it's pretty forgiving as far as clipping parts like that. Because I don't have something that I can use to... Like, I'm so used to playing this where you can I can just shrink this and make it super small. But I don't want to flip it over. If this was the way that it was put on there, we probably just had a little tiny bolt to detach it. Yeah. I don't have anything like that. Well, the worst that's going to happen is it's going to destroy those. Let me kill the force. Let's see how that works. Well, in any case, I need to put an adapter. I don't know. I'm feeling that's going to break them. Not good. No. Ah, that'll work. That might work right there. So that'll just increase it like that. Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right, so we got that. We got some solar panels. We got that, and we need some sensors. Let's get some sensors, and then we're good. All right, so here's. Now we'll put 4 on there. Whatever. No, actually, scratch that. We're just going to put that, and we're going to put that. Same old thing. Temperature and pressure. Let's see, because we're going to leave room for improvement. All right, so there's our simple little weather satellite. We're going to put that into a pretty high 400 by 400 some orbit. We're going to call it. What's called? I don't know what the stupid thing to call it. 0. Well, no, it's Kerbal, so it's going to be Kuro. If when in doubt, just add a K. Not original at all. I don't care. All right, this is the really slow rocket with this stupid kick stage. I don't like this solid fuel kick stage. You know what? This thing was launched on a Thor Able 2. Did this thing still have this? Did this Thor Able, this stupid rocket in here, this actually have the first stage was the Thor, second stage was the Able. Yes, it still had a final. It's called the Altair stage. 38-second burn, solid propellant. That's what the final part of it was. It was to get into the final sections of orbit. I don't. Yeah, because this is so efficient. This has so much. This second stage liquid fuel has too much propellant. If I really wanted to try to make it, I would decrease some of this fuel, which actually I think I'm going to do on this. I'm going to decrease that to about 15. Watch me regret it later. All right, let's get this going. Where did this launch from? Either California desert or Florida swamps. Cape Canaveral. All right, so the Tiros 1 for NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Oh, so they're on a partial spacecraft failure. Final flight of the Thor spacecraft ceased operation due to electrical system failure. 15 days short of planned of mission. Interesting. All right, let me stop yapping and get this thing launching. It did launch from Florida, so we're just going to launch it from the normal thingy. And how long has this been going? An hour and 45 minutes. Watch the Nixon-Kennedy debate from your... The Nixon-Kennedy debate, from what I understand, was the first televised debate like that. And supposedly the reason that they think the main reason Kennedy did so well is because of Nixon's sweaty upper lip. They thought looked unbecoming of a presidential candidate. And so everybody saw that mere thing changed the course of the elections. Oh, here's the model of that satellite we're looking at. A bunch of stuff. We got a video camera, transmitting antenna, wide angle lenses, more antennas, timers, synchronizer for a lot of television equipment, tape recorders, chemical batteries, more tape recorders. So it's a bunch of tape recorders and camera equipment sent up into space, pointing downward. Yeah, that is the lens straight up pointing downward. And the receiving antenna is on the other side. That's interesting. So there's transmitting antennas and receiving antennas. I didn't add a receive, but it doesn't matter. The game doesn't really account for that type of thing. Let's launch. Then he had the flu. And his publicist should... Well, that's the thing. Like, they had no... I guess it could be argued if they should have been able to predict that the general population seeing people look sick or looking anyway. That's like in the ancient times. Like, I know for like the ancient days of like kings and stuff, if somebody had a... Oh no, I think I rolled this too soon. Oh no, we're good. Yeah, king couldn't have any blemish at all. If they did, they'd have to step down. Like, there's one story of an Irish king that he got his hand cut off, but everybody loved him, so I think they let him get a prosthetic hand built out of silver from some magic thing, and that counted as not being blemished anymore, or something like that. Yeah. But it's interesting watching that debate and just listen to the issues that they're discussing, and it's the distinction between the roles of the federal government versus the state government are so drastically differently viewed then. Like, the two parties, at least from what it seemed to me, the two parties at that time were a lot more closer together than they are now, which I guess kind of goes without saying, but it's still incredible to see the difference. They're both agreeing of course the education system shouldn't be even touched by the federal government at all. Like now, like, rapidly trying to take things over that 50 years ago, and unheard of. All right, so we're going into a solid upper atmosphere launch here. You can see we're tipping over. We can get our nice ballistic arc. There's our ballistic arc. Our APWAP so far is almost 80 miles and steadily rising as our speed is getting much, much higher. I'm going to tip us over a lot more. At this point, we're going to get way past our... APWAP only needs to be 300, between 300 and 400. Right now, we are about 160, 170, 200. The engine's about to kick off. Decouple that. We're going to deploy that. So I don't even think I'm going to use this stupid kick stage. So it's just going to knock me into a crazy orbit. All right, so whenever I get up to Actually, we did one 300. So let's activate this engine. See us getting farther away from that. So that's increasing our speed and increasing our apoapsis. You can see it's also. So I want our apoapsis to increase at least to 350, let's say. So even though we're still down here, again, even though you can't even tell that we're moving or going any faster, because the difference is happening in our velocity and our momentum up here. So once I cut the engine off, once at 350, I'll cut the engine off. 350. There we go. So that's it. So we're heading upward. We're heading up. Can't really tell. We're heading up and up in that arc to about 350 miles up. Now, because I want to get a nice circular orbit. And I know I have enough fuel. So I'm going to fast forward it. So once I get all the way up there to 350 miles. Well, I'm just going to add a maneuver. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Well, it's not really cheating, but just so I can see. So once I increase my speed a little bit, see, it's going to increase my orbit. There we go. Now we have a periaps. 2. Let's add it to where it gets to 3. 308. 310. That's fine. That'll be a burn time of 42 seconds. So in 2 minutes, we're gonna fast forward till we get to that node, just to make it easier. As you can see, we're now leaving over that. Here we go. And as you'll see, that node doesn't even exist. I know where I'm going to need to be. So there's the green is where we're at. We're right about at our apoapse, but you can see our orbit it's becoming an orbit. It's going from an arc to an orbit as we're increasing our speed, we're increasing our velocity. It's going to fall, and it's going to fall around the planet. And we're still increasing our speed, which means our periaps is growing. And we're going to shut it down in a second. There we go. So we have a nice, large, very nice circular orbit. 365 by 328. All right. I'm not even using that solid kick stage. So we're just going to straight up. Oh! I don't know what just happened. That sucks. Something just exploded and destroyed everything. Oh, well, that's a disaster. Well, that's... Oh, no. Well, there'll be other weather satellites. We had such a nice orbit, too. I think I can look at... What just happened? Neutron, 1201. Separation of stage 4. Stack separate. Oh, I had that. Yep. See, remember I put that stack separator kind of pinned in with those antennas, and something must have collided with the fuel tank. Stack separator collided with the fuel tank. Everything just collided with itself. It was all because of that stack separator. So the separation really screwed everything up. That's bad. Oh well, I guess the Kerbal's gonna have to go without weather report for a while. I wanted to see that satellite put out there too. Oh, I don't think there's any more. I'm not gonna do it again because I'm just gonna that's these are different timelines of and if I was trying to make it perfect, then I would go absolutely crazy. So let's just return to the Space Center. I would revert it to launch. I could do it and just do it without Maybe I should have done that because I have to redesign the way it's going to separate. Wow, that's anticlimactic. I wanted to get a nice view of the... What else do we got going on here? We have some more missile tests. We're not going to do the missile test. The next thing I think we're going to do will be the last one, which is going to be the... Let's see. We have some more discover satellites. We have the Kerbal-Sputnik, or Korabl-Sputniks, which is the first series of the Vostok programs, which is the Soviets' attempt to make a human-rated spacecraft. That's where they put the dogs in them. So moving on to the summertime of 1960. Again, there are more of these spy satellite polar launches. Interesting, these Midas satellites. There was a lot of these Midas, which were experimental missile defense sensors. They had infrared. So there were lots of these military type sensor satellites happening. So let's take a look down. So there's the Tyros that I just failed to launch. Just see what it would have looked so cool. Because if I would have increased that and then extended the antennas, then we had that thing. And it could have had it spinning around looks like a real satellite, you know? Although this thing shouldn't be that long. But yeah, I got to think of another way to... This is what did it. Stack separator. Okay. Enough lamenting over that. So these transit satellites, so these are interesting, these navigation satellites that were launched by the Navy. GRAB. Galactic Radiation and Background. Launch for solar astronomy. So, you know, a lot of these institutions had a lot of nerds working in them, and they wanted to get all the science. I didn't look too much into these particular Navy launches, unfortunately, because there's the Midas 2, because they're basically these don't amount to much, but the programs evolve into much better programs later. A lot of these just prove to be test beds for later systems. Especially later on, they start doing the the Deep Space Network. Eventually, they get satellites all in the perfect orbit around Earth, so that they have perfect relay transmissions happening. Interesting. Anyway, these were launched on Thor Abels. This Midas 2 was launched on an Atlas Agena. Now, I haven't launched an Atlas Agena, I don't think, yet. Interesting. So we can hear because we can see here in April, the Soviets tried to launch another lunar probe, intended heliocentric. More discover, more lunar probes. All right, I think I am gonna. Where are we at? 1:59. We're about 2 hours. So yeah, the last thing I'm going to do is going to be my Vostok, or my Korabl-Sputnik. Now there were a few of these launched that year. There were I believe 3. If I look down, and again, these were human-rated Soviet. They're the predecessors of the Soyuz. They're the predecessors of the. Well, they're not quite Vostok as they later called Vostok. Let's see. So also launched this year was a Juno 2 was an Explorer satellite, Explorer 8, that was launched to detect radiation. I don't know. I'm not sure if I should just like, if I really wanted to get into the swing of it, I would just sit here and launch all of these. I don't know why I'm really stressing over having a 2-hour stream or a 3-hour stream. In which case, I might just launch these other ones, because now I'm like, yeah, I should just launch that Explorer 8. Oh, and then Tyros 2. Yeah, that was launched. So there was another. So I can. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Although I'm going to take a break really quick, and I'm going to come back. So yeah, there were. I'm going to launch a Korabl-Sputnik. Now there are a couple, again, as I was talking about, just these Midas satellites as well, which were these more communication satellites. I'm not going to mess with those. Those are just boring. I mean, you've seen what it looks like to put something in orbit on this video, so I'm not going to bother launching other random satellites in orbit. Although all right, so we will go with the. Oh, and also there are color films about like each of these satellites at the time that were released, I guess, as press releases, because it was a big deal. Like, oh, it's the first weather satellite where we can actually take film of the Earth and its clouds moving and send it back. I mean, the stuff we take for granted now, to see like the clouds moving from space. All right. So before I had launched this, I had sort of designed this. Oh no, something is off. Where are the antennas? Where are the antennas? Well, that's unfortunate. I need to add antennas, which is fine. Not a big deal. So this is the first. My rendition of the Soviet-designed what's called the Korabl-Sputnik, which later becomes the Vostok, that they send up next year. Next year, 1961, is the first time a human being is launched into space and into orbit, and that is the Russian Yuri Gagarin. So these are the years. Now they put some dogs into these things to test how well they survive, and then finally they do get some dogs that do survive and that they are able to retrieve with parachutes. So while I'm yapping, let me add. All right, so this is what we're going to use. This is going to be our test of our human-rated spacecraft, and we need to add a parachute. Now, one of the tricky little things that people didn't know about the early Soviet space program is the cosmonaut who was inside did not land with the craft, and that apparently was kept secret, because if anybody knew that, it basically would have like disqualified it from technically being a full-blown space launch and safe landing, because about a couple miles above the surface, the pilot bailed out of the spacecraft on his own parachute. So you would basically see two parachutes things, two objects falling from the sky, the capsule and the pilot himself. So the real one had these really weird looking antennas hanging off of it. I'm not going to do anything like that. We're just going to put some antennas just so we know that they're obviously antennas. And they look kind of funky. Oh well, that's fine. I'm not even sure how this detaches because this actual item here was added to the game long after I had already played. So just because this is going to be a test launch anyway, I'm just going to leave it like it is. I designed this earlier, but for all I know, it's going to explode like that other thing did because of the way this stack separator here is. But once it So the way this thing is, so this is the entire spacecraft that once it gets launched, this is the propulsion system that it has, and this rocket engine down here at the bottom is its retro rocket, as what's known as. So this is when the thing will turn around when it's already in orbit, and then it will decrease its orbit by firing its retro rocket. And that, again, back then, that was a big deal for it to be able to do that. Now, those spy satellites that we were just trying to launch into polar orbit, they also had retro rockets to where they would turn around, decrease their orbit, and then they could fall back to Earth and then be recovered and retrieved. So that's what the Soviets here are trying to do with this guy. So this was attached to a. Here, we're gonna make. Oops. We got to make this the root. That way we can save it. Now, the type of rockets the Soviets are using for this stuff, again, they're all fairly similar. They kind of add to it if it's not broken. I'm thinking about changing up the design of this because this is still the thin design. It's not, but anyway, I don't want to get bogged down on that type of thing right now. So let's see. So we got to merge our Vostok or our Korabl-Sputnik. So there's that. Yeah, see how it's a little big? So it's gonna look a little ungainly. I might have to adjust this entire rocket, but that's fine. Like if I have to make it a little bit larger or a little bit bulgy in some spots, I mean the real one, even though the design stayed the same, even up to the modern day, they did constant improvements on it. So let's see, the middle of this, I need to reroute this to that. Now I can get rid of that old probe. Now we can merge these probes. There we go. Now that's going to be interesting. So you see, we still have this. We have the first main stage. We have the secondary. This is called the block. Block E, Block A, has its own fuel in it. See its engine there, and then we have the main thing. Now, obviously, we got to adjust. This is going to look so ugly, but that's the way it goes. So we got to change this fairing up a little bit. So it looks a little bit like a normal. This thing is ugly. You know what? I'm getting rid of. Hold up. I like these things. These things look kind of cool on it, but I think they're messing me up. All right, let's try that again. I'm gonna the fairing. I can't make it look too realistic, unfortunately. All right, let's get that. All right, well, it's like a nice ice cream cone. Yeah, I think what I'm going to need to do is increase this bottom one so that it's a little bit more proportionate. Either that or start putting the payload fairing towards the bottom, because the real life one, the bottom part of this core stage was a little bit thinner. But there's no, again, I'm stuck with what if I'm going to keep doing it with stock parts. I'm kind of stuck with what they're giving me to work with here. So this is going to be what's going to call it. Whoosh God. Whatever. And I'll keep just increasing. I'm not going to keep him with. Again, I'm not going to try to fully mimic the real life. It's just a matter of designing the give the idea of the type of stuff that was going on, the type of stuff that they had, and how they were doing it. So yeah, this was the Soviets' version of what would later become our Mercury program and our Gemini program. All right, so let me double check my staging real quick. That's looking good. Next stage will be these things dropping off. Next stage will be this separating and this taking off, which is this and that. So this was not. This is going to go all the way up there. So those guys. I don't know what these are. Looks like we have some redundant ones. That's just going to have to be fine. We'll worry about that once we get in the orbit. Yeah. And what else we got? That's a payload bearing. It's not going to work. All right, that's fine. I think we're good. I'm going to save it. This took off from likely Baikonur complex in Kazakhstan. So we are going to launch it from the desert launch site. Bada boom. $1960. Alrighty. Since this is not an American launch, I'm going to turn off this capitalist Yankee music. And we need some real music happening. We cannot have this American music on such occasion. Не, нет, что не умеете по-английски. Oh boy. Let's try this one. Now we need some balalaika, the folk dances. And once we get to the 80s, the Soviets in the 1980s they performed some they had some synthwave, some pop music that's actually pretty good. I'm gonna mute myself and I'll be right back. Alrighty. Okay, so we are heading up with the Korabl-Sputnik, which is part of the Vostok program. So technically this was the Vostok 1KP. Gotta turn that down. I'm not gonna say this has dogs in it. But the goal of this thing is to be sent back, put into orbit, and return back to Earth safely from orbit. Here's our first launch. Over a bit early so I can make sure we get into a proper orbit. Because I haven't launched this thing yet, as far as its weight, not exactly sure. Oh, I also just recalled that I forgot to add. You can add invisible struts in this game, so the stuff isn't all flippy floppity. It's sort of like adding bungee cords to stabilize things. That theoretically, I guess, would break off, but oh boy, I forgot this was the lunar-rated Soviet launch vehicle, so we're definitely gonna get into orbit here. Now the real life version of this Vostok test, Korabl-Sputnik, had a problem with the engine. It faced the wrong direction and it went out way too far. And poor little doggy, yeah, didn't make it home. We're gonna keep it on going. Flip it over. We want to get into a nice orbit. When our other rockets. Now, just looking back, our ballistic arc is very nice as we're getting up to go down. Now we're adding speed. Oop. Time to keep going. Oh no, what happened? Okay, I don't know what happened, but we're good. That was interesting. All right, so what we have here is our second stage. Our Block E has its own fuel tanks inside of it. Gonna get us into a nice parking orbit, I hope. All right. So far, so good. Of course, I. Oh no, Sergey! Sergey, I forgot. We have forgot. We have not added parachutes to our landing craft. What? No parachutes. I forgot to put parachutes on it. I had a version of it. I must have forgot to save it. No. Forgot to save it. Okay. Well, this is out of fuel now. Oh dear, what's happening? Get back over there. Ah. That wasn't supposed to. Goodbye. Goodbye. Why did that happen? Why did that just separate? I was going to test our RCS thrusters. As you can see, they look really cool. But that thing just... our landing module just separated. And it's gone. All of these tanks are fuel tanks for the... So they're... So, okay. Well, you know what? They tried 3 times in this year. And, okay, so that's where we're at here. We're not quite in an orbit, so... That's unfortunate. That's life in the... That is life in the motherland. I was really worried about I would save before each time that I would... But nah, it's cool. So should I revert or just accept that as a loss? No, we are just going to accept that. This is a failure. So we're just going to return to the Space Center. So some prime differences I'm thinking is why this didn't work properly. There's obviously way more weight on this thing than there is on the lunar probe. So I think that's really the main cause of this issue, in addition to the fact that I really am not sure how the mechanics of this thing works, is why that's separated. Decoupler staging. Wait, it's on there apparently. I'm not sure. I just have to be extra careful. I mean, whatever that just said, decouple. Let's see. If I reload, what is it automatically on? There's only 3 here. There's that and that. All right, why don't I just get rid of that extra one? Oh dear. That extra one was a main part. That's what was happening. At some point that's right, I had to... All right, let's try this again. That is no longer going to be a main part. So we're going to reroute that separator. All right, this is going to take a second. Reroute that to... Let's make it this guy. That's fine. So what we're trying to do is get rid of one of these stack separators that we don't need. There we go. Oh, that's not even where it was. Oh man, I am really screwing the pooch here. Try this one more time. Reload. Last thing that we actually launched, which is this guy. Okay. Here's our extra thing we don't actually need. We need to reroute this to that. Get rid of this. Get rid of oops. That's good. We should also reroute this to this. All right, I think we're almost ready to launch. Now, what issues do we have here? We wanted to add a little bit more fuel. This thing obviously needs to be larger at some point. That block E stage, can I add more fuel? I don't think so. Whoopsie. I need to remove fuel from this so I can lessen. This has way too much fuel for the size. See, the thing is with this game is it gives you way too much fuel for the size of planet, because the planet in this game is way smaller than the real life planet. Okay, so I've just taken away like half the fuel from this upper stage, which is the propulsion stage. And really, this is kind of, the scale is kind of screwy. Of course it is. I'm going to take away even more fuel because this is more weight. Now, I can look and actually, I can check out the, up here, the thrust, the weight ratios. I'm not going to mess with all that kind of stuff. Let's just launch, see if it blows up. Now, I just remembered I need to add parachutes. Let's do that. For our doggos. I don't know what these things are going to do, but we'll just leave that there. Oh yeah, a heat shield would be nice, I think. Do I need a heat shield? Does this need a heat shield? I don't know. It might not even need a heat shield. That's the thing. This is because this part is one of the parts that was released way later on for this game, and it was kind of just catered to. It was supposed to look like. It looks like exactly like what it's supposed to look like, the original Vostok thing. So it was. I think it was cooler to try to make it look like it with what you had. But I mean, this is cool too. Now I'm still worried about accidentally decoupling this. What's going on here? Oh, that's all of our veneer rockets and stuff. That's fine. So this is going to be one. Keep naming them until we get one successful. What time is it? 11 o'clock. All right. We are ready for liftoff. I go into an earlier angle. Nice. We get some better angular momentum happening. So maybe we get a flatter ballistic trajectory, so that we can more easily get into that circular orbit. For We're way up in the sky. Over a little bit more. Alrighty. And we're about to get our Korabl cross. It caused an explosion again, but I gotta figure out why this does this. Sounds very safe. So that can come off. Oh wow. Still don't have enough to get. That's kind of wild. No. You're kidding. I don't have enough to get into orbit. Still. 33 seconds. I don't have enough for 33 seconds. Well, that second engine was going to have to do it then. Should get me pretty darn close. Get up there. I guess we'll test the re-entry in any case. So my orbit's still not quite making it. I either need to. Sorry, so we need to upgrade. We can still upgrade the fuel of the original of the carrier rocket itself. There's still enough room to do that. So we still got this. But I can't end this until I actually am able to land one of these successfully from orbit. What we're still trying to do here is just get into orbit. This stage is too small at this point. The size of this. The other thing is the size of this. I keep complaining about the Kerbal scale, but because the next version of this in real life is larger, but in the Kerbal one, it's the same size as this. So the upscaling doesn't really match up. Now I'm hoping this engine is going to have enough. Either the monopropellant. All right, well, it didn't explode this time. All right. I don't know. Let's see. Looks like it's going to at least get us into some kind of orbit. There we go. That's it. We're in orbit. We're in an elliptical orbit. I mean, an elliptical orbit. We are in orbit. Look at that. So if we had some woof woofs in there, we're in a stable position to got some. Yes. Now let's see. If I turn off the stability assist, the only way to get in this stable is to spin myself. By stability. There we go. All right. Doggos. All right. There we go. I'm kind of tempted to just keep the stream up like this with this thing just rolling. Why not? It's kind of relaxing. That works. If we had a Kerbal in that, we're good. Now we get him back down to Earth. To Kerbal. All right, I'm gonna end it here actually, because the this project, the Vostok project, did actually continue on into the next year, obviously. So as we continue testing, I will begin the next stream going into 1961, basically getting this thing back down from orbit. And then if I don't get this back, if for some reason this fails to get back down from orbit, I should be able to easily figure out what needs to be done to make it be able to get back down from orbit. And then next year, 1961, is the first human spaceflight with Yuri Gagarin. And with that, I'm going to leave it. And y'all have a great Monday night. God bless. Jesus saves. Take care.